Welcome back. In this week's Media 7 report, Simon Pound investigates why the listener's lawyers made a legal threat one media law expert described as reprehensible.
In the 22 March Listener, Dave Hansford wrote an Ecologic column with the title Some Like It Hot. In it, Hansford questioned whether balance was served by giving scientists and sceptics equal space in the global warming debate. He stated that some sceptics are not climate scientists.
Such as the stuff of dreams for climate change deniers. They rarely lock horns in strictly academic bullrings. Their mission instead is to create uncertainty in the minds of the general public, and to do that, they need the media.
Following publication, Brian Leyland, one of the climate change sceptics named in the column, wrote to Listener editor Pamela Sterling. In this letter, he threatened to go to the Press Council unless he received a right of reply. The Listener also received a letter from the US-based Heartland Institute, which it published.
He should apologise for his attacks on the growing number of scientists who say the threat of global warming has been oversold, and promise to never again write on this subject. And his publisher should accept nothing less.
The author of Some Like It Hot, David Hansford, no longer writes for The Listener. We visited Dave Hansford. He was prepared to give us a cup of coffee, but for the moment, very little else. The Listener strongly denies any connection between Hansford's departure and the controversial column. Meanwhile, website Hot Topic ran this blog, Climate Cranks Claim a Scalp, which stayed online for 2 days before being replaced with this correction and apology scripted by The Listener and its lawyers, Bell Gully.
On 16 April 2008, we published on this site an article written by Gareth Renowden entitled Climate Cranks Claim a Scalp. That article suggested that Dave Hansford had been sacked by The Listener as a result of views that he expressed on climate change, and that The Listener had caved into pressure from the NZ Climate Science Coalition. Mr. Hansford was not sacked by The Listener, and nor did The Listener seek to censor or suppress Mr. Hansford's views.
The next day, media law expert Stephen Price wrote a scathing assessment of The Listener's actions on his blog.
I think The Listeners used a tenuous legal claim to bully a blogger into retracting some moderate and reasonable criticisms. I don't like it when anyone does this, but it's particularly ugly when the heavies are acting for the media.
So where does The Listener sit on all this? We put these questions to editor Pamela Sterling, in writing as she requested. She had not supplied us with any answers by the time we recorded this show, despite our vigorous attempts to get a reply. She told us she was waiting on a third party and we would receive a reply in due course.
Well, Graham, just on the issue of a big media organisation getting so heavy so quickly with a small media organisation, is that good form?
Sledgehammer and walnut, I think, is what they tend to say in matters like this. This is a great story for us in the media because it's the media biting the media. And as you pointed out at the head there, yes, it's old media versus kind of new media, the bloggers and things like that. It is also replete with irony, I think, not the least of which is that one of the original intentions of the first column was to point out how in the name of balance, you just give certain people a bit of time in the sun. And the rejoinder to that was, well, that's exactly what they did. So, in a sense, the Listener kind of fell into the trap of the original first column. That would run in Village Voice.
Would exercising a right of reply being a better first option?
I would have thought the minute you get a letter from the lawyers, it suddenly ratchets it up. And your immediate instinct usually is to, right, well, let's see. I mean, it's different, I suppose, for a large organisation like ours compared to, someone trying to, defend a blog. But, yeah, it seemed... Isn't that what it's there for for debate? And sure, if they had an issue, put in the Listener's response to it, rather than sort of come in with the old heavy-handed arm of the expensive legal practice.
Yeah, I mean, we all know, sitting at the table, that the same defamation laws apply to these media. Maybe it could have been handled somewhat differently.
See, it's funny though, isn't it, with blogs? But because you hear the trouble we have with court reporting and stuff, Shane, and and stuff appears on the net. They can't seem to be able to deal with that, but some sort of poor, sort of hapless blogger sort of putting in an opinion gets sort of knocked out of court.
Oh, yeah, I come from a slightly different viewpoint. I think this is probably the first test case, really, where a blogger has been taken on, and so be it. I mean, we have to comply with defamation laws every day, and, I can see Pamela's point of view. The blog quite clearly implied that Dave Hansford was pushed out of the Listener building because of the nature of his column and the fact that Pamela had been lent on, and that wasn't the case at all. He was on a short-term contract. It's pretty straight up and down as far as I can tell.
Yeah, well, and despite the best efforts of the lawyers, it's all out there in the wild now. So the conversation, believe me, is still going on my own website, not least. Just before we go, we have a correction to make. In our first program, we suggested that an editorial that was ripped out of the Sunday Star Times magazine had that happen to it because it contained the following word used in a sexually explicit context. We were wrong. The editorial has since found its way onto the internet. What do you make of that?
I'm shocked and horrified.
I didn't know what most of the words were, to be perfectly honest.
That is the worst part, isn't it, when you go through those and you suddenly think, gee, am I just totally out of touch here? Because, I think that one and that one's fine.
Believe me, you're not the only one. We sat down trying to work out how many words were that length. And
it cost them a heck of a lot of money to call in the casual workers to rip the thing out, literally.
So there was no schadenfreude over at your paper?
No, we've been through our own issues.
You have. Thanks very much, guys. I've enjoyed it very much. And thank you for watching. It's been an eventful week, and we'll see you all again next week. Goodbye.